Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining today's webinar on the South Asian Dance and Music Mapping Study. You can see everyone joining, so I'll just do a quick introduction, and while everyone's joining, hopefully they won't miss too much, so it's okay if you miss what I'm saying. So, like I said, hello and welcome to the South Asian Dance and Music Mapping Study webinar hosted by Arts Council England. My name is Seetal Kaur and I am a relationship manager for dance here in the Midlands area team. Before we get started, a bit of housekeeping. I'd like to welcome Amanda from Stage Text, who is on hand to provide live subtitling. So thank you, Amanda, for joining us. To access the closed captions, you can click the live transcript button at the bottom of your Zoom window. Just click more and you should see show subtitles there if you need them at the bottom of the screen. I think it's been mentioned in the chat as well, so hopefully you can see that. So let's start by introducing our panel for today. So as I said, my name is Seetal, I'll be the host, and I'm joined by Kate Caniff, Director for Dance and London. We have Claire Merrin-Nelson, who's a Director for Music in London. And we have Afrina Islam Wright. She's a Relationship Manager for Diversity based in the North area. We have Midala Sverma. She's a Relationship Manager for Music, including Education Hubs. Peggy Nauman, the Tech Champion in the Digital Culture Network. And Joe Bates, Interim Director of Touring. So that's our panel for today. So my co-hosts and I will be speaking for about 40 minutes and presenting information on the topics that were outlined in the Eventbrite page that everyone signed up to. But you can leave comments in the chat function as has been going on. We have a wonderful team, Charlotte and Phil, who are helping us with the Zoom technicalities, and they'll be on hand as well. And there's a Q&A function. So at the bottom of your Zoom window, you'll see a Q&A button with two little speech bubbles. And that's where you can submit your questions that we will be able to answer at the end of the session. So please submit your questions in the Q&A button at the bottom, and we'll try to get as many answered as possible. We'll be recording this session for anyone who can't make it and anyone who wants to watch back later. So if you'd like to remain anonymous, there's a checkbox option for that when you submit a question. And as I said, we'll try and answer as many as we can. So I hope that's all good. So now we will go on to just an overview of what we're going to cover today. If we can have the next slide, please, Phil. So as was outlined in the Eventbrite, these are the three areas we're going to be discussing today. The outcomes of the mapping study in the context of the 10-year strategy, outlining what support is available, and discussing how the South Asian dance and music sectors and the dance and music sectors as a whole can contribute to the outcomes of the study with support from Arts Council England and other investors and partnerships. So we can have the next slide. We'll just quickly show you the structure. We'll have introductions and then the outcomes overview of the report. A little bit more about inclusivity and relevance. Then we have a presentation from Digital Culture Network. We'll touch upon a digital map resource and then close with the funding and support available. And as I said before, please submit your questions in the Q&A button and we'll get through those at the end. So without further ado, I will hand it over to our wonderful directors, Kate and Claire, who will just do a little bit of an introduction and set the context for today. So over to you, Kate and Claire.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Claire Mara-Nelson, and I'm Director of Music and London, as Seetal said. It's a great pleasure to see you all here today. Thank you very much for your time, because we appreciate this is a very busy moment and a continuing to be a very complex moment for us all as things start to open up again. I'm going to hand over to Kate to introduce herself, and I'll talk to you again shortly.
Morning, everybody. Can you actually see me? Because I can't see myself on this, so I'm just a bit confused. Yeah, okay.
Yep, Kate, we can see you. And Phil, if you can just have the next slide, if that's all right.
Good. Well, I'll try not to pull faces, because without being able to see myself, it's confusing me. As Claire said, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you giving us this time. As you know, we commissioned a while ago a report to look at South Asian dance and music sectors. From our conversations with the sector, we thought that there were 3 areas that we really felt needed further investigation, and those, as you know, were training, progression and leadership. But we were also really aware that the Arts Council has got a really narrow range of practice on its radar for South Asian arts. So we wanted to capture the work that's going on beyond our networks. I know it feels like a very long time ago since we commissioned the report, and that many things have changed in the meantime, but we do remain committed to this work. For all of us, COVID-19 has thrown us a little off course, to say the least. At Arts Council, we processed over 43,000 grants last year, when in a normal year we would only deal with 17,000. And I know that many of you are still facing difficult challenges in both your businesses and your individual practices. But as I say, we do really still believe that this work is still important.
Yes, important, but as Kate's implied, not instant. You know, any good change does not happen overnight, and there are some really quite significant shifts that need to happen in order to achieve real change in the sector. So this is the start of a conversation about how we might do that together. We need to work with you, other NPOs and other partners, to build the confidence of programmers in South Asian work. They need to understand that the audience is there and how to find them. So there's work to do in establishing those progression routes in this country, so that talented dancers and musicians don't have to travel to gain that training. It's a wonderful thing and something we are committed to doing to enable travel internationally, but there really do need to be the opportunities in this country to nurture the extraordinary talent that we are sure exists in this country. We need to reach out to a wider range of South Asian dance and music practitioners to share with them what the Arts Council has to offer. Of course, this also happens in the wider context of our new strategy, Let's Create, and our investment principles, particularly inclusion and relevance.
So as Seetal said earlier, we're going to talk to you today about what resources we currently have available to support the sector. We know that different stakeholders will engage in different ways with the Arts Council, whether that's an individual artist applying to develop their creative practice, or a group of organisations who might come together to lead on a particular strategic piece of activity. Our challenge is that our budgets are currently set only until April 2022. The spending review in the autumn of this year is going to hopefully mean that we'll know how much budget we have for all of our activity over the next 3 or hopefully even 4 years.
So, as we say, this is the start of a conversation with those closest to the issues. We hope that this is only one of a number of conversations that we'll have along the way with you and with others, and which will lead to a wider sector symposium early next year. We want to do the thinking with you. So, as Kate said, we'll take you through some of the resources currently available and how this work fits with our new 10-year strategy. But we are aiming to leave enough time at the end of this session to answer your questions and to start that dialogue. And obviously, we hope that you'll keep in touch and help us continue this conversation over the summer, into the autumn and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you so much for that. As we said, If you have any comments, you can leave them in the chat. And if you have any questions, please pop them in the Q&A box. We'll get to them at the end. Thank you, Claire and Kate, for that introduction. We'll now go on to looking more at Let's Create. So the Arts Council's 10-year strategy that was published. And you can find all about Let's Create on our website, on the Arts Council's website. But for this section, we'll just do a quick overview to jog our memories of the highlights that the aspects that were highlighted in the South Asian Dance and Music Mapping Study that are relevant to Let's Create. So as Kate mentioned, we focused on 3 key areas in the mapping study: training, leadership, and progression. So first of all, training, one of the things that was highlighted in the study is that training and progression routes in the UK do not adequately prepare South Asian dance and music practitioners for professional rigor and standards required to work and develop and achieve at world-class levels. So a lot of support is needed in terms of training. And this really aligns with the Arts Council's strategy investment principles of ambition and quality and dynamism, which are all about pushing things forward and adapting to context and adapting to the times. So if you have the next slide. And the next area was progression. There was so much detail highlighted in the study and that Courtney Consulting carried out. So if you are interested in more in-depth analysis and data, definitely have a look. We've got a link at the end of the presentation to access the report and the study. And so progression was one of the areas. These were some of the responses that came up from the sector about what would help progression in South Asian music and dance. So a better understanding of South Asian arts amongst the wider sector with different funders, not just the Arts Council, including an openness to fund more diverse South Asian dance and music and styles and roles. And then we have a couple more points here. Artists as entrepreneurs, progressing faster. Partnership working progresses artists. So that's definitely a highlight of working not just with the Arts Council, but other organizations and funders to support the sector as a whole. And we're looking at visible success stories and case studies. That was one of the next steps highlighted in the report that we're working on as well. So this really ties in with inclusivity and relevance, one of the Arts Council's investment principles. There's 4 of them. This is another one. And this is about real kind of diversity, inclusivity, and ensuring that people from all different backgrounds and parts of England are able to access and engage with the arts. But it really ties into progression, because one of the things in the study was it's not just people from South Asian backgrounds engaging with these art forms. You know, it's people from all different walks of life, all the kind of different people and members of the public in England should be able to engage with and access these diverse art forms. So if we have the next slide, please. So leadership was the final of the 3. And leadership, here we had quite a lot of really interesting points from the study that were made, and these 3 key points were pulled from there. It's really important to provide those kind of routes to leadership for next generations to come in and work with the pioneers from previous generations. So that's something that really needs looking at. How can things be taken forward for the next generation, and a great understanding of the wider, great understanding of South Asian sector among the wider UK cultural sector. So we are doing this webinar today. Obviously, we've invited people from the South Asian dance and music sectors and also the wider dance and music sectors, but we're definitely keen on making sure that it's not just the responsibility of the South Asian dance and music organizations. It is a bigger shared piece of work and development area. And one of the things that was highlighted was a bespoke leadership development program, perhaps. So that's something that the Arts Council, it aligns with the Arts Council's strategy in terms of these 3 investment principles: ambition and quality, dynamism, inclusivity and relevance. So all of these 3 investment principles really align with the highlights of the study and the things that were brought out from the sector. So in conclusion, it's basically to say that the Arts Council is supportive of the findings in the South Asian dance and music mapping study, and they really align with Arts Council's 10-year strategy, Let's Create, going forward. So the strategy is a way of basically how Arts Council makes investment decisions. It's a framework that the Arts Council uses. So it's really good to bear it in mind when it comes to understanding how the Arts Council supports the development of different art forms. So you can find more information about that on our website. As I mentioned, there's lots of resources about the investment principles. So please do have a look. And as I said, it's basically the way that Arts Council makes investment decisions. So it's really good to have a look at that. So yeah, that's just an overview of the report findings and how it ties in with Arts Council strategy. But now we'll just move on to a little bit more about inclusivity and relevance, which is one of the investment principles. Oh yeah, this slide is basically pulled from the mapping report, and it's basically concluding a lot of the findings of the study. So if you're interested, as I said, there's a link at the end of the presentation that we'll share, and you can have a look more at the report. But it definitely basically summarizes that the findings of the mapping study align with the Arts Council's strategy. So the next slide, I think we'll go on to Afrina, who is our wonderful relationship manager in diversity. And she's going to talk a bit more about inclusivity and relevance investment principle, and just delve a little bit deeper into that, as it's quite relevant to the South Asian dance and music development work. So over to you, Afrina.
Thanks, Seetal. So as Seetal has said, my name's Afrina, and I'm the Diversity Relationship Manager for the North. I'm also a mother, and my 3-year-old is at home with me today, so you might hear him shouting me in the background. And I also need to disclaim that South Asian dance and music is definitely not my forte. I came from a fairly old school Muslim Bangladeshi background, and I participated in my choir at the Catholic sixth form college that I went to. But beyond that, opportunities for getting involved in South Asian dance and music seemed pretty few and far between. My background's actually in theatre, and so I joined a youth theatre at the age of 18, and it was a little bit of a rebellion, really. So before joining the Arts Council, I toured my own solo show for 2 years, Daughters of the Curry Revolution. And all too often, the venues that I toured to marketed the show to only Asian audiences. And I was never really sure of what the motivation was. I didn't know if it was whether they thought that non-Asian audiences wouldn't be interested, or maybe they thought that this was the opportunity to get the Asian audiences in. But unfortunately, my show wasn't aimed at Asian audiences, and this could have been established had the venues had a quick conversation with me about their marketing plans. So I think this leads me on to inclusivity and relevance and the transition from Creative Case for Diversity. With inclusivity and relevance, we're taking a much more holistic approach, looking at the bigger picture, which will hopefully result in the experience that I had becoming less and less of the norm. Inclusivity and relevance has 3 strands. The first one is communities, which means audiences, participants, and people that are local. geographically. And then the second one is workforce, leadership and governance. And I think that this speaks to who's making the decisions. And we want to see representation at the highest level, as well as within the workforce. And hopefully by breaking it down into workforce, leadership and governance, it's clear that we want to see progress in all of those areas. And then we still have creative case for diversity, the third strand, and that's probably familiar to most. It's the programming strand, which is who's on our stages, who's on our pages, etc. The very brilliant Nina Simon from Of By For All has created some great resources for us, and they're on our website if you've not seen them yet. And one of the key aspects that really stands out for me is specificity. The example that Nina Simon uses is, instead of describing a community as new immigrants, you might choose to focus on Somali mothers with young children who live in the Small Heath area of Birmingham. I think this approach can be particularly advantageous to you as artists and arts workers who create, produce, promote, present South Asian dance and music, because it's so broad. We're not purely defined by any one single of our characteristics. So in the tools that Nina Simon has created, there's an exercise inviting organisations to reflect on their existing and desired communities. So looking at communities that you're serving well, and then looking at communities that you want to reach. We're looking for those decisions to be informed by data. That's ONS data, local authority data, audience demographic data, workforce data, even our data, whatever data you can get your hands on. And I think it's sometimes easy to forget that our funding exists to serve the public in England. And with regards to our regularly funded organisations, we have stated that we expect to see progress against inclusivity and relevance targets that they've set, or face sanctions. This might mean that venues and organisations that don't usually work with or programme South Asian dancers and music practitioners might suddenly want to. And I'm not saying this is any bad thing, but I think that the agency must remain with the artist. As an artist myself, I was always super grateful for opportunities that I received, rather than thinking, oh, what value am I bringing, and kind of valuing that for what it was. I never applied to the Arts Council for funding, and that was because I always thought you had to know somebody at the Arts Council to apply, or, you know, I didn't know what I was supposed to write in the application, if there were like buzzwords that I didn't know. And I didn't even know that I could apply for fees for myself to create work. And then within a week of working at the Arts Council, I was absolutely fuming that I didn't apply. So now I just spend loads of time telling people to apply. And I'm really hopeful that with inclusivity and relevance, that it's going to result in further progress and development for the South Asian dance and music sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Afrina. Thank you so much. That's great. If anyone has any comments, please put them in the chat. And if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box. That would be great. Now we're going to go over to Peggy, who's from the Digital Culture Network. So one of the next steps that was actually recommended in the South Asian Dance and Music Mapping Study was to signpost or create a strategic digital network for the Arts Council and the South Asian dance and music sectors to kind of engage. We actually have the Digital Culture Network, which is a fantastic organization and resource for artists and organizations to gain digital skills and strengthen their work in a digital sense. So we really feel like this is a great resource for the South Asian music and dance sectors to tap into. And Peggy's here to give an overview of what support is available and how the Digital Culture Network works. So over to you, Peggy.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So my name's Peggy and I'm one of the tech champions with the Digital Culture Network. Could we just move on a couple of slides, please? Thank you. So as the slide says, we are here to support the sector to harness the benefits of technology and achieve your digital ambitions. It's quite a lot in there. So what I'm going to go through is just the kinds of ways we can support you and how you can get in touch with us. So we do that sort of like lofty mission statement by providing practical support and training. And that looks like online training, online support, webinars, and also workshops and one-to-one support. We also broker partnerships with the tech sector. So for example, we have a partnership with Google Arts and Culture, and we run some joint webinars and training programs with them. We also work with the sector support organisations who some of you might be familiar with, and we share best practice and we signpost to resources, and we do that through our website, through social media, and through a regular newsletter that we send. So we've currently got 8 tech champions working in the Digital Culture Network, and this is just some pictures of us all. We've got specialists in content creation, in social media, in email marketing, that's me, in box office and customer relationship management, data and analytics, which obviously has just come up as being quite an important area for you, websites, digital marketing and strategy, and search engine marketing, or SEO and paid marketing. We support people through one-to-one support. We do phone calls, video calls, and that's totally free. We also, I just want to let you know that all of the sessions that we run, everything with the tech champions, our one-to-ones, is totally bespoke. So I know that sometimes digital can be something that kind of rings alarm bells for people. It feels a bit scary. But what we do is we will speak to you. We will find out exactly what your needs are, exactly what you know and where you are in your digital journey. And it doesn't matter if you are kind of right at the beginning and you've got no idea. We'll have a conversation with you and find that out and work out some of the best next steps for you. So you might have be right at the beginning, you might have a specific problem that you're trying to overcome, or you might already feel quite digitally secure and want to do something a little bit more ambitious, and we will totally tailor the support to what you need. Also, you can speak to as many tech champions as you like. Normally, when you get in touch with us, you'll be introduced to one tech champion. It might be the person who's working in your area. So for example, I look after the Southwest, or it might be someone who's working in the particular specialism that you want to work with. But that initial tech champion will be able to introduce you to any of the other tech champions that you might want to speak to. As well as running the one-to-one support offer, as tech champions, we run training sessions. Since the lockdowns and the pandemic, we've been doing those all online. So we've got a regular series of webinars. Pre the pandemic, we were doing in-person workshops, and we also write resources and create videos for our Knowledge Hub. So what you can see on screen there is one of the first places to go if you're wanting to access support. That's digitalculturenetwork.org.uk, which is the website we launched last September, and it's a real kind of receptacle for all of our resources. We've got written resources, videos, all of our webinars have been recorded and are on there. We run a busy program of training webinars. If you just go on to the next slide, they're available free of charge. So just want to emphasize that everything we do is totally free. And we're always keen to hear topic suggestions. So if you have a look at our webinars and think, oh, there's something else that we're not covering, you can always get in touch and let us know. If you want some ideas of ways we can support you, also on our website, if you just go to the next slide, we've got quite a few case studies on our website. So if you wanted to see how we've supported other organisations and what the impact of that has been, I would really recommend going and having a look at those case studies. I also mentioned our newsletter, which we send out every month, and if you want to engage with us in one way, this is actually a really great way, because it's just a monthly roundup of everything that's going on. So it can really just keep you up to date. So any new resources that we've put on our website, any new events that are coming up, and then anything we've spotted across the sector. So events that we aren't necessarily running, but we think would be useful for people who are looking to build their digital skills. We also have a Twitter page, so if anyone's active on Twitter and is keen to see what we're doing, that's run by our social media tech champion. So again, it's just a roundup of resources and interesting things that we've seen. And then finally, we've got a YouTube channel, which has got all of our videos on, so our webinar recordings, short how-to videos and tips. So yeah, like I said, the best port of call is to go to our website initially, and I'll put some contact details in the chat if anyone wants to get in touch.
That's great. Thank you so much, Peggy. So we're really thrilled that we can offer this support and resource to the South Asian dance and music sector. Artists, organizations, if you're looking to strengthen digital work and skills, please do tap into the Digital Culture Network resource. So if we go on the next slide, and it's just going on to the map, I think that one, Phil. Well, yeah, that's great. So this is a digital map resource, just following on to the digital theme, that was actually created as part of the mapping study. And it's all publicly available information, but it's basically showing a map of the UK and where there are South Asian dance or music schools or artists or activities and training. And it's really, really brilliant that the consultants put this together. And we're just kind of putting it out there as from the Arts Council, whether anyone, organizations or individuals from the sector would be interested in developing this resource further. It could be like hosted on several different websites. It would just need a bit of management around entries and listings, but it could be a really valuable map of the UK of where South Asian dance and music activity is happening. Could be used as an advocacy tool. It could be used as a signposting resource. So please do have a think about how yourself or your organization or anyone you know might be able to take this forward. And as I said, we'll have a link at the end of the presentation to where you can get in contact with us to say if you'd like to take this forward. So thank you. Next, we'll go to Midla Sarma. So she's our relationship manager for music in London. And she's going to be talking about the funding and support that's available from the Arts Council as we've put together this kind of summary table. So over to Midla.
Yeah, I mean, hi everyone. I just thought I'd quickly wrap up before the Q&A. So we've been developing this resource, as Seethal said. It's a very, very quick and baseline exercise we've kind of done to help link the outcomes of the report with our strategy and investment principles and how those directly link to funding opportunities that we currently have. So really it's kind of, we're hoping that people can use this to frame conversations that they're having with partners, with artists, venues, promoters, whatever else it might be, to think about your project and how it kind of fits with the report and the investment principles. I'm going to run through them very, very quickly, and I know you've kind of heard all of this before a little bit as well, but I'll just go through it. So one of the first outcome is more young people from diverse South Asian backgrounds pursuing a career in the art sector. And we think that really aligns with inclusivity and relevance, which Afrina's already spoken about. And I mean, generally with most of our funding programs, you know, this is something we're always looking at. So project grants, developing your creative practice, and also we look to our MPOs and their business plans and look at how they're supporting people as well. The second one is a new era of quality, excellence, inspiration and inclusion for everyone at every stage of their career in the South Asian dance and music sectors. We think this relates to ambition and quality. And just one thing to highlight, it did come up in the report about training opportunities, sometimes having to go international, and with developing your creative practice, you know, this is something we can support. We can support some funding for international travel for training, but more generally, we're looking at how, you know, applications are looking at a meaningful progression or providing meaningful progression opportunities for artists. And, you know, this is always something to bear in mind when you're having conversations. The next one is a bigger and more diverse audience and appetite for South Asian dance and music across the UK. We think that relates to dynamism. And I think here specifically, I think it's looking at partnerships and those broader partnerships as well. And some, you know, developing digital to reach new audiences is something that would really strengthen an application. And again, your conversations with Arts Council or even other funders. A stronger and more diverse arts and cultural sector in the UK overall that is representative of and influenced by its South Asian communities and creative leaders. Again, we think this relates to inclusivity and relevance. We've had programs already such as Transforming Leadership and Elevate funds to try and address this. But again, when you're having conversations, any sort of leadership development, succession planning, those kinds of things within funding applications would also be looked at favourably as well. I mean, just to say, we are not the only funders, there are other funders out there. And as much as this report has been published by the Arts Council, we really want this to be a resource that you can use when you're having conversation with other partners and investors. And we do provide advice giving at the Arts Council. Many different teams do it differently at the moment. One of the ways is if you were to bring together a group of people, artists, practitioners, whoever they might be, and want some advice on project grants, we're always happy to come in and have a conversation. You could do that with other funders as well and have a kind of, you know, a session around that. And we're also looking at advice giving at the moment and its impact. So I think later down the line, as that conversation develops, we'll be kind of putting out new material. So always keep an eye on our website and see what's out there as well. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much, Vidula. So if we go to the next slide, yeah, so now we're at the Q&A. We wanted to leave quite a bit of time for a Q&A, and thank you to everyone who submitted their questions so far in the Q&A box. If anyone has any more, please do submit them there so that we can keep track of them and they don't get lost in the chat. So we're going to cover as many questions as we can in the time that we have with our brilliant panel. So for the first question, I'm going to try and incorporate 3 questions into one here. And I think Claire might be able to help me with this one in the sense of we're talking about syllabuses, teaching frameworks for South Asian music and dance. You know, they might not, they don't kind of fit into existing frameworks or universities and institutional frameworks. So how can the Arts Council help to address this issue that the South Asian dance and music forms currently don't fit with the existing kind of frameworks around learning systems?
Yes, it's a really interesting question, and Darren Bear may remember that I was formerly the Director of Music at Trinity Lab and Conservatoire of Music and Dance, and we had a partnership with the BAVN to deliver a programme there. And I think I've certainly taken away from that experience a clearer understanding of some of the complexities of marrying together 2 very different approaches to the construction of training. I think the critical thing I'd say from an Arts Council perspective is that we won't be putting together a curriculum, but we are very interested to bring together organisations who are trying to think about ways of attracting young people to engage in training and development opportunities right from first access up into kind of elite training and beyond. And that ability to bring together the right kinds of partners to have the conversation, I think, is something that we'd very much like to do going forward. The chief, I guess, challenge is about finding mechanisms which are sustainable. And I think that's the fundamental question, is about how do families and the community feel about young people being involved in training, and to what end? At what point does a kind of elite training route for specialists who want to go on to be performers kick in, and what are the characteristics of that? And I think there's a really important key in this, which is that no one organisation can or probably should be responsible for providing the training for all young people. In my experience, the best opportunities for young people come from that rich tapestry of different organisations in different places in the country, which mean that those early opportunities are available where young people live. And as they progress up, there is that kind of broader infrastructure to help them as they develop and progress. So I think we'd be very interested to carry on that conversation and see if we can do a bit more work to really identify where the gaps are or what might need to change, and what role the Arts Council could play in convening those conversations.
Thank you, Claire, that's great. I wanted to go on to a question about advice giving and just kind of feedback frameworks. Lata's asked if Arts Council has some kind of facility applicants can be given advice on the application like HLF does. They used to have surgeries. Sure, we can do it via Zoom now. So I'll just ask Midela to just highlight what kind of advice giving we have. I think someone else has mentioned about an unsuccessful application as well. So just to highlight the frameworks we have in place for that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, just to say, obviously, this past year, everyone's capacity has been at max. So I think where sometimes there will be individual opportunities to read through applications and give feedback, that's probably not as common, but hopefully, you know, we'll find time again soon. Like I mentioned, different teams do that differently. So for instance, in the London music team, we have monthly surgeries on a Wednesday afternoon. And the best way to kind of see what's available in your area and within your art form is to either email customer services, or if you do have a relationship manager or know one of the assistants in one of the teams, just email them and they will point you in the right direction. And again, like I say, this is based on capacity. Alternatively, if any of you are able to host a session, you know, if you know, we're more than happy to come to webinars. So if you find a date, bring loads of practitioners together, want some advice on project grants and answer questions a bit like today, but specifically on applications, then do get in touch and we can always try and find someone to come in and do that. But as always, give it a little bit of time as well. So probably not too last minute, but with some notice, I'm sure we can make it work. Thank you.
That's great. So definitely contact the inquiries team and they'll forward on to the relevant people within the Arts Council. I think that's kind of hitting the points. Mira Goshik's asked, who do we talk to about our new ideas, specifically independent artists? So that's the kind of framework we have where advice giving goes through the system relevant to each area. So hopefully that will help in that sense. I just wanted to address a little bit of some questions that were talking about classification. So we have these words, you know, contemporary world, these classifications in the Arts Council. So I think if we can address that, because it's definitely some of the conversations we've been having quite seriously within the Arts Council, if Joe or Kate would be able to help us answer that. But I'd just like to mention that we are definitely having conversations about re-looking at the classification of South Asian dance and music forms within the Arts Council. And that was one of the next steps and things highlighted in the mapping study, was that we definitely needed to categorize more accurately and relevantly. So yeah, if anyone else has any comments they'd like to add on that. Kate, I think you're unmute.
I'm only unmuting to kind of endorse what you're saying, really.
Yeah.
I think we discovered yesterday that there is actually a review of all of our classifications going on. So we are endeavouring to speak to the right people and make those changes as you describe. It's always a really fraught area because we need to keep the classifications consistent from year to year so that we can track the data. But we also do need to recognise emerging forms and also very established forms that we perhaps have not been specific enough in the past with.
Yeah, definitely. And definitely there's a kind of theme around, supporting South Asian dance and music projects that are only contemporary innovations. But definitely think if we, as we highlighted with the Arts Council's 10-year strategy, it is more about, what's inclusive, what's relevant. Those are the kind of frameworks we're looking at channeling our investments. So it's not about necessarily what's new and innovative, it's actually what's kind of relevant to certain communities or members of the public as well. So just have a look at definitely the Arts Council's 10-year strategy, and hopefully there should be more clarification around how we make our investment decisions, for sure. So we've got some questions about how can we apply for funding and things like that. So definitely have a look at our website. On the funding pages, there's a lot of information about the guidance and different funding streams that we have. So please do have a look at that if you are an artist or organisation looking for funding support. We have some questions about developing ambassadors that go into the wider dance and music sector. And that was one response from the report, was how do we ensure that the national dance agencies and the music education hubs, like as a wider sector as a whole, the dance and music art forms are also engaging with South Asian dance and music, and there's a wider impact. That's a question put by Supriya.
I was going to come in on that, Seetal.
Yeah,
if that's useful. So in terms of, particularly from touring perspective, that's sort of what my hat is today, I think that organisations can have a look at some of the work that came out of the strategic touring programme that was all about developing audience ambassadors, so that you're perhaps able to go to some of those venues and programmers with a bit of a wider offer. And obviously you can include that in your project grant applications as you're coming in. So there's a brilliant toolkit that Fuel Theatre put together, where they used local engagement specialists, and that offer was to particular venues and programmers to help support them and engage in particular communities, so that it becomes much more of a kind of collegiate approach rather than your one-hit wonders, let's fly in, do a show and fly out again. So it's a great resource. There's also some other resources on the Culture Hive website where quite a few of the strategic touring case studies went on, and a lot of them did look at really embedded audience development work. So I would just say, in terms of those local ambassadors, role models, how you can bring people in, and there's some great frameworks that you could use there.
That's great. Thank you.
Sorry, there are also established networks that we can tap into that some of the people on this call are members of. So I know it's not called the National Dance Network anymore, but it escapes me what it is actually called. But I know, Alex, for example, you're on that network. Suba, you're in that network. And I think we could be working with you to raise the profile of South Asian dance and talk to those networks who have venues to programme work about how we might actually work together to do that. UK Dance Network. Thank you, Paul. Sorry, not keeping up with all these changes.
That's great. We have a question from the Academy team. So Academy is a South Asian dance organisation as well. So they said, I know we're waiting for a spending review, but are there any specific initiatives planned around the diversification of leadership? Thinking of artistic directors of the future type, but for executive directors and producers. And I think this question also kind of was addressed by Ginny Wollaston, who's talking about developing producer development, digital dance development and things. So I think producer development and leadership, is there any ways that Arts Council can support that? What do you think? Kate, Joe, and Claire. I mean, I think there are specific kind of leadership programs that have been created in the past, but I think it's definitely something going forward that we would support. It's just, as Kate mentioned, resources are very tight, and I think with the spending review that's coming up, and that will kind of clarify things a bit more, do you think, Jo?
I think just to say that we had a war chest, shall we call it, of money that we could spend on our delivery plan in this financial year. And we spent most of that budget on the emergency response funds that we launched, I think, within 3 or 4 weeks of the closure. So we are, like everybody else, waiting for the next financial year. There is an emphasis on leadership in the in all of the investment principles, but also in the delivery plan around some of the outcomes. So we are still hoping to be able to do quite a lot of that work, but a lot of our spending will depend on the spending review in the autumn as to what extent we can support some of this work.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a question about the symposium. At the end of the mapping study, it was highlighted to convene or consider convening a sector symposium that brings all these conversations together. But we have a question from Magdalene asking about how do we ensure that the symposium is linked to specific and attainable outcomes. I think Mithila might be able to help with that question, because going forward, we are definitely keeping that, next step in mind.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how many of you have been able to read the response from the Arts Council, but we talk about, we have convened a working group internally, so we're kind of constantly considering what the next steps are. And for us, it's about ensuring that, that symposium doesn't happen and then that's it, and, that's the end of it. And I think that's why these conversations and these smaller conversations, firstly, feel a bit more manageable, but whilst everything else that's going on, but we're able to have these so that we can then really figure out what's needed. And obviously, one of the things we've identified are there's so many different types of stakeholders here in this one meeting. So how will it be useful, and what can we really get out of it is something we'll be considering. So I think at the moment it's conversations like this that will start to inform how and if the symposium would be the best kind of way of ensuring real kind of attainable outcomes.
Yeah, that's great. I just have a question I thought maybe Afrina could help with. One question is how does ACE decide relevance? So just from your kind of the investment principle side of things.
Yeah, I think the relevance isn't decided by us. The relevance is relative to each individual, like, artist, organization, where they are, who they're trying to reach. I think that's where the relevance comes from. We are not the deciders of that. I hope that's clear. Yeah.
It's definitely the public and the relevance from that, for sure. We have a question from Alex Croft about given specificity is a priority for ACE as part of inclusivity and relevance, should we drop the term South Asian as a catch-all? Alex has done that in Bradford as often. When South Asian use, we're talking about Indian classical. So the majority of our South Asian heritage communities in the district are not of Indian heritage. So I think it's about kind of terminology and things like that. Yeah, Afrina, if you wouldn't mind chipping in on that. I think personally, what I was thinking is, it is what is relevant to the audiences and relevant to the people you're trying to engage. So if they don't align with a certain term, or it's not relevant to them, I suppose that's what I would say. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. Because as somebody of Muslim Bangladeshi heritage, like, I don't often see myself reflected in when South Asian is used as a catch-all term when it comes to dance and music. So I mean, I personally would want to move away and be more specific, and I think say what you mean is kind of always what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to hit one question about digital engagement. I wonder if Peggy can kind of help with this. Is there information about digital audiences from South Asian backgrounds for organizations to understand more about that?
I saw this question come up, and it's not something that we've looked at as the Digital Culture Network, because our sort of remit is more about supporting people with their digital skills rather than doing that kind of research. But I'll see if I can find out if any research in that area is available from any of our sector support organisations or anyone else we work with.
Yeah, I think maybe the audience agency.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so I'm just keeping an eye on the chat and things. I think a couple of the questions have been about you know, more support for artists and advice. So we'll definitely put some links in the responses to those answers, to those questions. Looking at a question from Kate Madden, our organisation provides art specialists for schools, community settings. Is there an opportunity to apply for funding to enable a shadowing apprenticeship model to up and coming artists? I definitely say, Kate, have a look at you know, the project grants criteria and have a look at the different funding streams that are available. I think it might be definitely interesting project idea. We've got a question asking about from Kieran saying how can Arts Council ensure that venues are willing to take a risk in programming South Asian music and dance, reduced income perhaps, or audiences, taste buds need to be developed. I think this is definitely something that was highlighted in the report about audiences and understanding audiences for South Asian music and dance. So I think perhaps that might be part of the next steps that could be looked at. I think obviously in a post-COVID world, or we need to have a look at the touring and ways that South Asian dance and music is presented. Would you guys agree?
Can I come in on that? Actually,
Yeah.
It's a really interesting point, and I think there's an interesting balance between the kind of venues and places where South Asian dance and music of all types has been platformed in the past and what ones might be able to be developed going forward. I mean, every venue takes an element of risk in programming, and that risk, you know, there's a multiplicity of different models on which that happens. So sometimes the risk is shared with the artists or the organization, sometimes the venue itself is promoting. So I think there is a real space for development of thinking about the models of promotion of South Asian dance and music and how that can happen in conjunction with venues. And as an example, a conversation I've had quite a lot recently is with what we term grassroots music venues. So that's the kind of venues that traditionally around the country promote you know, emerging artists or small scale bands, typically in kind of rock and pop genres, but actually lots of them are not limited to rock and pop. They do program other events in other genres of music and indeed beyond music. And I think looking at local venues like that could be a really interesting way of exploring that relevance question. How do you develop new audiences, whether they're audiences with a South Asian background or indeed not with a South Asian background, and who is the promoter that is best able to communicate with those audiences to develop their interests in the work? I'm really confident that there is the potential for a big audience for the work, but it is about thinking about it really carefully and thinking about partnerships along the way.
I was just about to reiterate exactly the same thing from a touring perspective. It's about the partnerships. And I don't think at the minute, based on where we're at post-COVID, people are going to be doing, and organisations and artists have been doing all song and dance, big national tours at this moment. So this is the opportunity where the offer may be to some of those venue programmers and partners, we want to work with you. We don't want to just sell our work to you. We want to work with you. And it may be trying to identify half a dozen really strong partners that you can work together to do that around both developing the art form and the audiences, whoever they might be. But yeah, just to reiterate, that partnership working, I think, is key.
Yeah, Great, thank you. Well, we're coming to time now, to 12 o'clock. So thank you to everyone who has submitted their questions, everyone who's been commenting in the chat. We have tried to answer as many as we can. I've just noted a couple that I can quickly wrap up with. Is Sanjeevani mentioned about digital network development. So I think definitely have a look at the digital map that was created. It has a lot of kind of listings and resources, so that might be an option. In the recording of this webinar, you'll definitely find more information about that and how to access it. It's in the report documents. And yeah, comments from Farouk about outdated kind of labels that might need looking at. So we'll definitely keep these things in mind, and opening up frameworks for East Asian artists. So as the Arts Council moves more into kind of the inclusivity and relevance and ensuring that diversity is there, we'll definitely keep that in mind. Strategic initiatives, as kind of Kate outlined at the beginning of the webinar, it's all about reviewing, working into certain timescales around how much the Arts Council actually has available for resources according to the Department for Culture, Media and Sport and the spending review. So we need to kind of see yet how much resource we have. Building relevance from Magdalene. I think we have a couple more questions, but what we'll do is try and save these and keep these in mind as we're going forward. As Mithila mentioned, we have an internal working group for the South Asian dance and music development work. So all of these questions and all of these comments, all the responses, we are taking them into account when we're moving forward with things. So just to wrap up, if we have the next slide, please. We have a link here on the slide and I will post it on the chat as well. This is the page on our website, which has all the information about the mapping study. It has the documents and the summaries and our responses on there. So please do check out this web page. I will post it here in the chat. And, oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. This is the page where everyone can access a link where it says get in touch. So if you have any further questions or responses about the mapping study and about today's webinar, please do check out this website link, and it has a get in touch button link on there, and you can submit your responses and questions that way. So sorry we didn't have time to answer everyone's today, but please do submit your responses there, and we want to continue the conversation. As Kate and Claire mentioned at the beginning, this is a really important area of work that we are committed to supporting and developing. So please do visit that website and leave your responses. As I said, the working group internally will take these responses into account when we are developing the work internally going forward. Do we have any other comments from anyone? I've seen Joe seems fine. I think everyone's good. So thank you to our panel today for giving their time and their expertise and knowledge to help us understand more about what the next steps are in this area of work. I'd just like to thank Charlotte and Phil for being great technical help on the Zoom. And thank you, obviously, last but not least, to everyone who's joined, all the attendees. Thank you for taking an hour out of your really, really busy days. We know it's difficult to attend today. We will share a link to the recording, so please do spread that wide and far. And like I said, please do visit the website. I've put it again to get in touch with us, and we'll hopefully keep the dialogue going, and we'll keep all of your questions and views in mind when going forward. Thank you, everyone, And that's it for today. And we look forward to continuing the work. Thank you.